Hello knitters, Phelan from Strands Knitting Studio in San Clemente, California. And today I have a class, what's on my needles, a class and a how-to tutorial on how to knit faster, a couple little tips. This is an encore tutorial, so I did it a few months back, but it's got a lot of good stuff in it. And so this is gonna show you some tricks to like get your knitting a little bit faster. So stay tuned. And into a class, Minonata scarf. Yes, I still love this thing. So this is a slip stitch pattern. This is a really good beginner, intermediate beginner. It's all knit though. The only thing that's, it's only fiddly just to get it started. Once you've got that much done, then it's not fiddly anymore. You know, just like anything, you're starting with so little few stitches, it's a little fiddly for a few rows. But once you get into the actual pattern, it's all knit and slips, knits and slips, knits and slips, and that's it. So this is a class, you just need to know how to have done knitting and purling, even though there's no purling in here. Knitting and purling, because you do have to move your yarn back and forth like you would for knitting and purling. As long as you can knit and purl, you can do this. I guarantee it. This is mostly, and then also learning how to track a pattern like this. It's not hard to track, but you do need to track it, obviously. And some tips on markers, getting markers set up to make it easier and stuff like that. So this class is May 30th, which is a Saturday from 12 to 2. This takes 2 skeins of our cashmerino, which is, it's just 2 skeins of one of each color. Okay, so that class is May 30th, Saturday from 12 to 2. Okay, on my needles is market bag. So this is the market bag we've been doing. I've got so many people doing this. They've bought like multiples because they make great gifts and people are starting to actually think about Christmas. But I could do these for Christmas. But this bag right here with the basket weave mosaic pattern. So this bag, so we're running out of this yarn. We still have some, but we have something else in here that a lot of people have used too, and they turn out really nice. And that's our coastal cotton. And so it's still a cotton. This is just a really good basic cotton that's really good for things like this that we get a lot of wear. And so I've started one like that. So see, it's still just as pretty. And same pattern. I think you're gonna need two skeins. I'll let you know because I'm not quite done with that one yet. So, but we have tons of colors of this. And they're just, the colors are so pretty. So you could do that. You can do this one. I'm just giving you 3 ideas because there's a lot of ideas over there. We could do this one. Pretty, pretty, pretty. You could do 2 solids, of course. You could also just do solids, a solid. That would be fine too. But this is a very simple bag. The hardest part is after you've done the bottom, which is just knitting. Then there's 2 sizes, a small and a large. And it's just knitting after you've done the bottom. Then there's this pickup around the bottom and a couple rows where you purl and you purl a row, knit a row, and you're doing some increasing. That's like the hardest part of the whole bag. Once you get into the basket weave, it's simple, 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 and goes really fast, and it's fun because you don't have to think so hard on it and everything like that. So this is another option. I'm telling you, Wednesday's class, like a third of the class pulled out these bags to work on them. And so, so I just wanted to give you a different option if you want to come in and check it out. And as I said, we still have some of the Karen's, it's Karen yarn, and for this, but this is a totally fabulous alternative for the market square. It is called market square bag is what it's called. So there you go. All right, next class we have coming up is a beginning sock class. Yay! I know. You guys crack me up. I have very few sock knitters. You know, the knitting world, sock knitting is huge in the knitting world. And there are people who only knit socks. Once you learn the construction of them, they're actually pretty fun to do because there's a lot of parts that's not thinking, and then you just have your construction little, like the heel or something. But there's also so many ways of trying out new things, and it's just a pair of socks. It's not a sweater. So, you know, trying new stitch, I mean, the socks that are out there are amazingly gorgeous, you know, besides just the plain ones. So this is like a never-ending rabbit hole to go down, and I think that's why people do them pretty, you know, that's their jam, because you can learn a lot of different things, and it's only a pair of socks. So it's not a blanket, it's not a sweater, you know, it's not even a hat, but a hat would be, you know, a hat's faster. But so beginning knitting socks. So we teach you on a baby sock, because the part you need to know is this part right here and this part right here. And this part isn't that hard compared to, this is the main construction part, where you're turning something flat, you know, a tube into a 3D construction, you know. So so we use this. So this again is using the same sport weight that I did on the scarf. So you're gonna get 1 skein of the cashmerino, and I think we're on a size like 3 or 4 needle. I haven't looked at the pattern in a while, but it's gonna be, you know, a smaller needle, but it's not a 1 or a 2 like you would be on a regular socks. So, and also you're only knitting this much, which isn't very much, to get down to here, right? So that we can work on there. So in that 1 skein, you can get 3 socks. So there'd be a 3rd sock here. So, and what I suggest you do is, once you've made the first one, that you're on the second one, you're gonna knit it till right before you're gonna do the heel. I would put it on a holder, knit the other one right before you hit the heel, and that way you can do a heel and a heel back to back. So it takes about 3 times of doing, this is a heel flap. There's lots of different heels. That's a whole other, so there's so many different ways to do a heel, but this is your tried and true basic one, is what I'm gonna pick, which is the heel flap. And so that way you've done 3 heel flaps, and usually by the 3rd time you do it, your brain starts understanding what's going on. After the first time you do it, your brain's gonna go, what in the world did you just do? That's normal. So that's why it takes at least 3 socks, or even maybe 4. I actually say it takes 3 pairs of socks, and once you've done 3 pairs of socks, then you will know whether or not you like sock knitting, because either people are sock knitters or they're not sock knitters. But you have to take some time. Remember last week I was talking about process knitting, or the week before, whenever I talked about process knitting? This would be an exercise in process knitting to start with. And this way you're learning something new, but you'll also just be able to figure out whether you want to continue going down that rabbit hole of a socks and all the beautiful socks there are, or you're like, nah, not for me. So so that class is June 7th, which is a Sunday, from 10 to 12. So in the email, or I'll have the information like for the needles and stuff, but it is only 1 skein of the cashmerino, which is a sport weight. That's why we're using it. It's a sport weight, and it's washable. So, and here, if you have a baby to give them to, you'll have 3 of them. So if one gets lost, you'll still have a pair, right? Okay, so that is June 7th, Sunday, from 10 to 12. Okay, and now you're gonna stay tuned for a tutorial on how to knit a little faster, some tricks that help you just knit a little faster. And this is for people that throw, so the yarn's in their right hand. Continental knitters, you don't need it as much. But for my throwers, which is most of you, this will help a lot. And just, I would cast on a swatch and practice. Just, you know, put in 20 or 30 stitches to just practice and getting your knitting faster, and before you do an actual project with it, because your gauge, it's sort of going to be all over the map a little bit. It'll be a little tight, a little loose, so you need to get your hands, the whole thing settled down in your hands, and then you can do a project with it. So stay tuned. So today I have a tutorial for knitting faster. And I'm only going to talk about 2 different things. This is going to only pertain to people that carry their yarn in the right hand, or a thrower, or a continental, and not continental. And then continental is where you hold the yarn in your left hand. I don't know that either of these, well, I know that holding your yarn won't work. I don't know if the other tip is going to help you or not, but you could try it. But I have a feeling it doesn't, because of the way your stitches are orientated. So with that being said, so one of the really interesting ways I've figured out how to go faster, and I've never heard anybody talk about this, and I don't know why it works, but it does, is I hold this needle like this, and I actually move my left needle. So mostly we use our right needle go in like this, right? And we're moving our right needle, and the left is being pretty stable. So I'm going to change it. I'm going to hold this, and it's not up like this. It's like almost, you know, horizontal. And I'm going to push this down on my needle. So I'm going to go, that's down on my needles around, and then I'm using the left-hand needle to move it up and over. So this one goes down, wrap, up, and over. Let's see if I can show you this way too so you can see it. Down, so I'm pushing this down. This isn't moving. Watch my hand. You can see my left hand's moving, but my right hand's staying. So push it down, wrap it, and then bring this up and over. And as you come over, you actually end up pushing the stitch down, which is a good thing. And then up and over. Push it in, wrap, up, and over. Now again, I'm not quite sure why this works so well, but it does. I just think there's actually a little bit less movement. Yeah, I'm not sure why this works so well, but it does. So one more time for the last bit of stitches here. So the last bit of stitches, you're gonna, now I do like move this hand a little bit just to get in the right position to do this sometimes until I get going. And that's down, a wrap, up, and over. And just do it really slow. So you know that swatch I talked about last week? You can practice this on your swatch. And do it really slow. So if you do it very slowly and methodically, and that means you're pretty much doing it right all the time, then your hands will pick it up faster. If you're going too fast and you keep sort of glitching and stuff, then it takes the hands way longer to figure this out. So down, around, up, and over. Down, around, up, and over. Down, around, up, and over. So that's a very, very simple tip, and it really does make a difference. So the other thing you're doing is you're gradually, now if you're a beginning knitter, I don't want you going up on the tip of your needles quite yet. But if you've knitted for a while and you just want to, you know, do a little bit faster, keeping things up by the tips, and you got to be careful because you can't tighten it down on the tip, but and the least amount of motion, like you don't want to be going big giant motions like this. That just takes up a lot of time and a lot of, yeah, that's very time consuming when you're thinking about efficiency over thousands of stitches, because that's really all we're talking about. How to make your movement more efficient over thousands of stitches, which, you know, microseconds make a big difference, you know. I know it's hard to even wrap your head around that, but so keeping your knitting at the tips of your needles. But notice I do go all the way down here. Wish I could figure out this a little better. So, but you're still going down, but also everything's, I'm not going that far down, but when I do this, it's now down past this little, as Christine calls it, the sweet spot, where the needle, you know, tapers out and then it stays this width. And so the stitch has to get down. If you are stacking like this, then your stitches are going to be too tight. You're not going to be able to move them over the bigger needle. So make sure you're not just knitting and keeping these right hand, this one, your left, my right hand needle, or probably is my right, because I'm going to switch it so it is. But if you do this, when you're on your tips, then now these stitches are much tighter than these. These are much tighter. All right, so you're going to keep on your tips, but make sure you get it down past the sweet spot. With doing it with the left hand, it sort of automatically does, because you're just sort of shoving it down there. I'm still just moving my left hand for the most part. Okay, that's tip number 2. All right, and that's it for today, and I hope to see you in the studio real